everyone. Welcome to this week's Fireside Creators. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sherry Palace. For this week's show, we are talking about the Santiago Camino Walk, and we have a phenomenal guest. Thank you for joining us, and I'm looking forward to all of your comments and questions. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe. If you are on Facebook, grant StreamYard access so we can see your name when you have a comment or a question. And please remember to keep all comments and questions related to the show topic, and that this is a safe space. I want to give a huge shout out to our top sponsors, Ruth, Kirsten, Michelle, Ray, and Heidi. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate your support. And if you like the show, you can help by supporting it. You can go to www.sherrypalace.com. I don't take a tithe. I don't do offerings. There's no collection plate. This is it. And there you will find literally dozens of ways to help. Thank you in advance. And thank you for welcoming us into your home and joining this conversation. I appreciate you all. Okay, enough housekeeping. Let's meet our guest and get smarter. The Reverend Mel Soriano works in the software industry and serves as a traditional deacon in the Episcopal Diocese of Los Angeles. He offers spiritual guidance, preaches, and supports the unhoused. He has walked the Camino de Santiago pilgrimage in Spain 6 times and just completed his most recent one this past June and July. Welcome, Mel. Mel, can you hear me? Oh, no. Where'd you go? Let's see. Mel. Oh, this hasn't happened before. Oh, there you are. Hi. Can you hear anything? Oh, no. Hello, David. I guess we are having problems with the feed. Hold on. Oh, no. Bounce back in.
I seem to be having audio problems.
Oh, I can hear you. I can hear you and I can see you. Come back.
All right, I'll go out and come back.
Okay, so I should do a little dance or something. This is the first time this has happened. Good old live shows. How's everybody doing out there? Are you hot? Are you sweating? Let's talk about the weather. Let me go ahead and remove this. So as soon as Mel gets back, Anna might be jumping in on the show too, my beautiful and wonderful producer. Maybe, we don't know. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so we want to hear all about the walk that you've done now 6 times. And this time was different, right? Because you had just had a new ordination.
That's right. That's right. It's a little bit different. This is my 6th time in the last decade. And the first time I went was when I realized I had a call. And so this last time was a way to celebrate and a chance to say, I'm done with seminary, I just graduated, and I literally just got ordained and the next day got on a plane.
Wow. That's so cool. It was like your spring fling after graduation, right?
You could say that, but it was a planned one. It was an intentional one, and it wasn't by myself. So my husband joined me, and about 24 other people followed along. Some of us went in at different times and with different distances, but a core of us of about 8 started in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in France and walked 500 miles.
Wow. Okay, so what exactly is it?
Okay, so the Camino de Santiago is a pretty ancient pilgrimage, about 800 or 900 in the year 800 or 900. There is purported to be the bones, the relics of Saint James the Apostle, the one that you read about in the Gospel. And so James, the son of Zebedee, did a lot of his missionary work in Spain. So having his bones meant something important to a lot of people.
Okay.
So for over 1,000 years, therefore, people have headed all the way to Western Spain to see these bones, to pray with the bones, and to be in the presence of those relics. This is something that often happened in the Middle Ages and at that time because it offered an alternative to going to, say, Jerusalem, which seemed so much further away and was a little bit more dangerous. So this was a very common way for people to explore their and to deepen their religious faith and to incorporate a sense of adventure in their journeys of faith. And it's just been going on forever.
So, as I said to you backstage, as an evangelical, I never heard about any pilgrimages. I mean, we were supposed to go to Jerusalem, but that was more of like a tourist event just to see and just, to walk where Jesus walked type of thing. So when this show was suggested, I'm like, what is this? And there are a total of 3 pilgrimages, and this is one of them.
There's anything can be a pilgrimage, but there are 3 ancient pilgrimages that for the Christian faith that are still walked. There's the pilgrimage to Jerusalem, this one, and to Rome.
Yeah.
So those 3 were the oldest, but there are more contemporary ones now. As an example, here in the New World, we have pilgrimages to Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So when people fly all the way to Mexico City from wherever they might be coming from, they're on pilgrimage. They're coming to that basilica for a specific reason. And for some people, there's about a 3 or 4 mile distance between the center of Mexico City, where the cathedral is, and where the basilica is. They will walk that, and I did that. And some will go on their hands and knees in a sort of token of humility and traverse those 3 or 4 miles on their knees. Others will walk with small or extremely large statues of Mary and process from the cathedral to the basilica as they pray along the way.
And so what's the point?
Well, that's always a personal reason. Everybody has a reason. I went to the Holy Land this January as part of a class. So it's not technically a pilgrimage. It was a class.
Okay.
I was going to even meet a high school classmate of mine who now lives in Tel Aviv. But my frame of mind and my frame of heart was not merely to go for tourism, but was to go not just to see the places where Jesus walked, but to explore my own feelings and relationship and my own faith. And that might even be to challenge my faith, to challenge my feelings as I explored these areas. So a pilgrimage isn't merely tourism. Pilgrimage is meant not to just learn something that you can do on Wikipedia. It's meant to make yourself open and receptive to a new understanding of yourself.
Okay. I love that. It's almost like it would be like a meditative walk then, right?
It
Okay.
is. It is. And frankly, the Camino de Santiago as a walking pilgrimage is unique in the sense that it is considered to
Yeah.
be purely and more directly a moving pilgrimage, not merely being present, but being present as you move.
Interesting. Okay. So how long does it take you to walk 500 miles? And that
Well,
song is in my head, of course. I will walk 500. Yeah.
a legitimate one. And
Yeah.
speaking of which, the song goes, "And I will walk another 500 miles."
More. Yeah.
Well, coincidentally, that's about the distance from Scotland to
Oh, wow. Okay.
no. So first off, that 500 miles is from about the border of France to Santiago de Compostela, and that's for Americans and for folks to have sort of a baseline starting point if they don't know where else to start. So for a lot of Europeans, they start from their backyards, their front yards, their
Oh,
front
wow.
doors, and will walk however long it takes. So, for example, on my very first Camino, I ended up walking with these two teenage young men. One turned 18, one turned 19 on the Camino, and they walked from their front doors. They lived really close to each other because they were first cousins. They walked from their front doors in Linz, Austria. That's a distance from Chicago to LA.
Wow.
So it took them 3 months walking 20 to 25 miles a day, and that was a lot greater than just 500 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know a fellow here in the Los Angeles area who walked from Poland uh, to
Wow.
yeah. So
That's dedication.
right. So everyone's distance is different. So whatever length of time it takes, it all depends on how much you can handle. So most people they walk about 15 miles a day. That's the most they can handle. And so, as an example, my husband made it clear when he first walked the Camino 6 years ago. I refused to walk more than 15 miles a day. So that was our limit. But some people can only walk 10 miles a day. I, if left to myself, can usually walk 20 to 25 miles a day.
Oh, wow.
So everyone's different, and depending on how much you walk per day, that's how long it'll take. So 500 miles at 15 miles a day is about 100 miles a week, 5 weeks.
Wow. Yeah,
And if you
I've often joked that I don't like walking unless it's to a destination. So, like, I'm just not, I've never understood the whole let's go for a walk thing. It's like, okay, to where? Where are we going? I'll walk, but we got to have a destination.
you
Um,
belong in Los Angeles.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's exactly why I don't want to walk. But yeah, I mean, is there a lot of stopping and talking? Is there smelling the roses, or is it really we're on a mission?
I hope it's not we're on a mission. I really hope that for people who do this, they are not looking at this as some sort of athletic event um, or something that is to be conquered uh,
Mm,
and
unless it's
accomplished.
yourself.
Yeah, to set a flag down and cross a finishing line. So no. It's not that. It's all about the journey, not the destination. So as you walk, as you move, you could walk by yourself and you could avoid people. You don't have to talk to anyone. There's no requirement that you do so. But we're human creatures and we're inclined to talk to those we walk beside. And you're
Hmm.
going to walk beside some people. And as you walk beside them, share stories. These are people from all over the world. If you've always wanted to meet someone from Uruguay, you might see them on the Camino, and you might be walking beside them. If you wanted
Wow.
to see what it's like to walk with someone from Ukraine, yeah, you'll see them on the Camino. If you wanted to talk to them, and if you wanted to keep to yourself, that's fine too. But the beauty is in the relationships and how you can find out about each other and to help each other, and most of all, how you can grow with each other.
I love that. I mean, when when people set out to do the same thing, and walk the same path, whatever it is, but are kind of stuck together, in my experience, I've had some of the best experiences like that. And I'm thinking of a festival that I went to where we had to, the first day, just to get in, we had to wait in line for like 6 hours. And the people around me, I mean, I don't remember their names. I would remember their faces for the rest of my life. And that was one of the beautiful things about the entire festival, was getting to know those people, sitting down and singing, because we were stuck in line for all of that time, and that camaraderie and that common goal of, we're going to grow this weekend and we're going to do all these things, was so beautiful.
It really is. And in your situation, you were sitting outside or somewhere, but in this situation, it's day after day. And you also have the opportunity to break bread with people and and you're going to have lunch, you're going to have dinner.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, you got to eat. Yeah.
right. And for me, you got to have at the end of your walk, when if you finish at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or whenever you finish, it's like, I'm sorry, I'm going to have a beer and I'm going to have some gelato or something. So I'll be hot.
Yeah. Are there any restrictions or any preparations to be done other than getting into shape to walk 15 to 25 miles a day?
There's all sorts of preparations, and it's not just the physical. There's also the spiritual and the emotional. You'll be by yourself a bit, and you will be in the middle of nowhere for longer stretches of time than you're probably accustomed to. Are you ready for that? Are you ready to be able to sit quietly with yourself as you move?
Mm,
Are you ready to listen to silence for a long period of time? There were times the only sound I heard was the wind for,
wow.
2 hours, 3 hours as you walked. Um, and then there were other times the only sound you would hear would be city noise, because you'd be crossing through a city and you'd be hearing city noise for hours on end after you'd been in the middle of nowhere, literally nowhere for days. And suddenly you have all this city noise. It's a lot to process. Are you ready to be able to traverse this different landscape when you get to it?
And what is the terrain like?
Well, it's a little bit of everything. If you do 500 miles and you're starting on the French border, you have to get through the Pyrenees Mountains, and you have to climb over the Pyrenees Mountains. Now,
Wow.
there's a trail there, but you are climbing about 4,500 feet, and then going down 3,500 feet. So that is a bit of a challenge for people. So some people don't like to start in France. They start just over the border in Spain to avoid going over that. But it's a gorgeous walk if you decide to do that.
Treacherous?
It is. And if you've watched the movie The Way, which stars Martin Sheen and was produced by his son, Emilio Estevez, it is treacherous. However, uh, it is also a beautiful, beautiful walk that is, for the most part, safe if you stay on the trails.
Mm.
So, but I'll tell you one thing that happened to me, and I bring this story up a lot because it just shows how you sort of have to let go of some of uh, the fears that you will encounter. Okay. I had started deeper into France around Lourdes, and this was on my third Camino in 2016. And it was 80 degrees. I had sort of pulled a hamstring walking the first 100 miles over the rolling hills of Basque France. And I said, you know what? There is a luggage service. I'm going to give my backpack to the luggage service. It's 80 degrees. I'm about to cross the Pyrenees. I can't handle carrying my backpack. So I gave my backpack to the luggage service to take it to the next village on the other side of the Pyrenees. And I could do the 18 miles without the backpack. I just brought my day pack, and all I had in my day pack was my rain poncho and my water. By the time I left at around 7 in the morning, by 10 in the morning, I stopped at the last village, had some coffee, refilled my water. By the time 10:30 rolled around, it started to rain. By 11, it started to hail on me.
Oh my gosh.
So the poncho came out at 10:30. By 11 o'clock, that poncho was shredded, and it looked like what those curtains and ribbons you see in a car wash. It was
wow.
And I was so cold because I was still wearing shorts, still dressed for 80 degree weather. And I was nervous because at 11:30, the fog came in and I could no longer see the trail.
Wow.
So I used my walking stick like a blind person would use a cane to make sure I didn't accidentally fall off a cliff.
Wow. I've never even seen fog that thick.
It was that bad. We're in the mountains at that point.
Wow.
And so I'm terrified, absolutely terrified. There was a religious statue I wanted to see, and I couldn't see it because of the fog, and continued and somehow made it through the fog, and I was just terrified that I would get hurt. And I saw no one. I think everyone basically decided we're going to stop because the hail is dangerous and we don't want to continue walking. Well, I had no trees, nothing to protect me, and I was basically without protection because the only thing I had was this flimsy piece of poncho. So I kept walking, and at one point I started hearing footsteps. Thank goodness, someone's coming up. Someone's about to join me. And when the footsteps got to me, I looked over to my left. Okay, so I mentioned I had a husband. I might like Broadway musicals a lot more than the typical person, so don't be surprised about this analogy. But I looked over, and there was this person with a backpack and a poncho, and all I could see was his face, and it looked like, you look like the guy from Jesus Christ Superstar in the movie. So it's like, oh yeah, compare it to a musical. Okay, so I looked like, it's like, oh, it looks like Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar. And I was just so relieved. And he said to me, with an accent, because Camino is for people from all over the world, he said, hello, hi, how are you? I'm a little scared, to be honest. He goes, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Roncesvalles, which is the village on the other side of the mountains. He said, you'll be fine. I'll see you on the other side. And when he said, you'll be fine, I'll see you on the other side, first, when someone says, I'll see you on the other side, it sort of sounds, but I believed him. I felt like I'll be fine. And all this anxiety suddenly drained from me. And then he walked ahead of me. And I realized he's got this screaming bright red fluorescent poncho. And I could see it in the fog. And with him being like 6 foot something, I was able to follow him through the fog.
Fantastic.
He didn't have glasses, so he didn't have the steamed up problem that I was having with the fog and his breath. he just plowed through it. I just followed him, and I followed him up these rocky terrains, and I followed him up, and I felt safe. And at one point, where the fog began to lift, I realized we're cresting this mountain. We're hitting the top. And that's when I lost him, because he crested the mountain and I no longer saw him anymore.
Oh, wow.
And I continued another few hours walking down the mountain, and I never saw him the rest of that day.
Wow.
And the next day, he puts his hand on my shoulder as I'm walking. About an hour into the walk, he puts his hand on my shoulder. And I could tell it was him, just because we said we'd look for each other the next day. I felt his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "I told you you'd be fine." And I said, "I should have believed you." And we walked that day, and we broke bread, had a picnic at the side of the trail a couple times, and we walked that day. We basically ran into each other every few days for the next few weeks.
That made my eyes leak. That is beautiful.
But what the thing about that, other than having Jesus tell me I'll be fine and see me on the other side,
Jesus Christ Superstar.
it's like, oh yeah, so white man Jesus too.
Yeah, of course.
But the thing about that was so amazing was this last Camino, I walked over the Pyrenees again, and I realized I was experiencing trauma leading up to this. I had experienced trauma, and I was wildly anxious about going over the Pyrenees again, and I found myself nervous. As each day got closer, I got more and more nervous, and I realized you suffered a traumatic experience, and you're now reliving it as it comes closer.
Mm.
When I walked over this time, this would have been June 15th, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. I walked over, there was no fog. It was a drop dead gorgeous day, beautiful day. I could see all the things that I couldn't see in the fog.
Yeah.
There were no cliffs nearby. The cliffs were 30 yards away, 40 yards away. I wasn't near them. They built the trail far enough away from the cliff so you'd be safe. And not only that, it was the most beautiful sight. Everywhere you looked was beauty, beauty. Gorgeous valleys, gorgeous peaks, sheep and goats and horses everywhere. It was stunning. And yet I feared for my life 6 years before in those very same spots. And it was the fog in front of me that kept me from realizing how beautiful my life was.
Wow.
It was a fog that kept me shrouded and not being able to see this amazing beauty that surrounded me, and I just couldn't see it.
And how safe you really were.
Exactly.
And how false the fear was.
Exactly.
Wow. Wow.
It was
That
an
in
amazing
and of
moment.
itself should make it worth it, right?
Yeah. That was day one.
Wow. So when we were talking about doing this show, you said that your first ministry after being ordained was on the trail. What was that like?
So yeah, it's really interesting because I had my appointment here in the Diocese of Los Angeles as a deacon, and I'm here now. I'm in my office at the cathedral in the Episcopal Diocese of Los Angeles, St. John's Cathedral, and I knew that was lined up. I knew I'd be coming here, and I knew I'd be serving the people here in the cathedral. But a deacon isn't about a place. A deacon is about going out and meeting people in the streets. Okay, 6 months from now, I'll be a priest. But for now, I'm a deacon. And the idea is to bring the church out to people and to bring their needs and concerns back to the church. So I didn't expect, being on Camino, that I would actually start serving and doing my ministry until I got back home. But one of
Yeah.
the things I was most fascinated by while on Camino was how people reacted when they learned I was ordained.
Mm.
And I didn't expect this. I didn't expect that I would be treated differently. And
In
that
a good way
people
or a bad way?
in both some
Okay.
people became quieter and some people became more verbal about what they were needing and what they were looking for. And
Mm.
I found people almost seeking me out to want to talk to me about their spiritual needs, and me sitting down and pastoring them. And normally you have open conversations on the Camino. People are amazingly transparent on the Camino. Everyone's feet hurts. And
Yeah.
so you become a little more honest about the things that hurt in your life. So you help each other with your pains on the Camino. So that's normal. But you don't necessarily look to pastor or ask someone to pastor you. And that's what I found myself being asked to do in some situations.
Oh,
In
wow.
fact, one young man whose only experience was in the Evangelical tradition totally caught me off guard. He was from Denmark, and towards the end of, like, around the fourth week, he, after walking with him for a couple of weeks, he said, I was wondering if I could do confession with you.
Mm.
So now he obviously wasn't familiar with that tradition, that practice in his tradition, but he knew that it would be in someone of my tradition. So he asked that of me, and I had never in my life expected anyone on Camino to ask that of me, and especially one from his tradition. And I realized he is needing some pastoring, and that opened me up significantly to understanding that we are all ministers to people, and that we can be asked to be ministers to people at the most random and weird times. Like, I'm soaking wet with sweat, dude, but if you want me to pastor you right now, I will.
Blisters on your feet and all.
That makes it even better.
When I get really tired, or I'm not feeling well, it is difficult to be kind. My fuse is really short, and I like have to talk myself into it. No, Sherry, don't be a bitch. You don't feel good. These types of things. So I would imagine that would be part of this pilgrimage of just trying to work through and not be evil as you're feeling so bad, right?
You know, it's really funny. It is something people think about, and honestly, people are just beautiful. Even when
Oh,
we're like that, we all understand why they're like that. And we understand when we see it in someone else. And I'll tell you, my first Camino, walking 25 miles a day, I had some major blisters.
oh my God,
And
I can imagine.
yeah, and I wasn't, I had trained, I'm physically able to do this, but I didn't expect the blisters to be so bad, and have so many of them, and showing up in like the strangest parts of my feet. Like, why is there a blister there? Um, and normally I'm such a big baby when
Right? Me too. That's
I
why
just
I'm
feel I
saying
don't feel good. Someone take care of me.
that, right?
So I was just so amazed at how people were so patient with me,
Mm.
and were so willing to say, well, what can we do to help you? Do you want us to go to the pharmacy and get you something? And so on.
Wow.
And knowing that they too had blisters, and then I'm like, you have blisters too. Why don't we both go? and to the pharmacy because you don't speak Spanish and I do. So I'll translate for you what you need and we'll help
Wow.
you,
That is
and
so beautiful.
yeah, and you realize that even in your pain and your, grumpiness and all that, we're all in it together.
Yeah.
We're all sitting here going, "Why did I sign up for this?"
Right? I mean, this has nothing to do with anything, but I have to ask, what's your favorite pair of shoes to wear?
Okay, so I've walked it 6 times. I've worn um, Keen's hiking sandals, Arroyo 2s.
Ah,
Um,
okay. I'm familiar with the
um,
Royals.
I've worn those 4 times. I've worn Keen hiking boots once, and I hated them because they weigh a lot, and
Mm,
having your feet weigh a lot is the worst thing you can do if you're walking a long distance every single day.
yeah.
This last time, I absolutely loved my new Ultra shoes. The Ultras are have an extra large toe box for those of us with wide feet. And so my toes had all this room to wiggle. And they're sort of also flatter so that I'm not leaning forward on your toes like
Mm.
most shoes. So because of that, the flat-footedness, I didn't put unusual pressure on my toes, and that's where my blisters would appear.
Ah,
So this was wonderful. I had no blisters at all, nothing that even resembled a blister. And I was, just so happy that I've switched to these about a year ago, and I'm going to stay with them from now on.
so how did your husband do?
No blisters either. Both the first time he did it in 16 and this time he had a little ankle sort of pain, but it wasn't blisters or anything he could do. He just had to uh, take some ibuprofen and he
Yeah,
was
that's nothing. What about the journey for him? Was it?
now. So for him, he's not a religious person. He's spiritual but not religious.
Mhm.
So for him, he uh, was able to walk and experience the beauty of the land, and he loves animals. He's basically like a secular Saint Francis. The animals love him, and they just flock towards him. And so he had all these cows and billy goats and sheep like racing towards him everywhere
Oh,
he
how
went.
awesome!
It's so cute. And so he was just having the most wonderful time walking with all these animals. And it was wonderful. So he had a great time. And of our group, his sister also walked, and a niece, the daughter of another sister, also walked. So it was a family affair for him.
All 500?
His sister walked 200 miles, and his niece walked 150 miles.
Wow. Wow. I think it would be a really difficult decision for me as to whether or not I'd want to cross the Pyrenees. I would probably end up saying no. I want to see that. I want to do that, and then cursing the entire time. what? What? This is one of my bad decisions. Why did I ever do this? I'm gonna kill Mel for talking me into this.
But I do point out that two things. One, you don't have to cross the Pyrenees. Start in the village,
I know, but I'd want to.
but there's also break up the walk. There's that final village before there are no more villages. Stay there in one of in the one accommodation there. Stay there and then walk, and then it's only 5 miles. Excuse me, 5 kilometers, 3 miles. Day one, and then a much less steep, much more relaxing, beautiful day for day two.
2 days?
Instead of one day to cross the Pyrenees.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because the first day is just so crazy steep that's when you really are cursing and I don't wear my collar, so I get I'm allowed to be very upset when I'm going up that steep part. Um, and um, yeah, it's a bit of a challenge, and the age range of people. I have seen people cross the Pyrenees from about the age of 10 up to the age of in their 80s.
Wow, that's
And
awesome.
yeah, and also that the age of 10, that's just the Pyrenees. The youngest person I saw do the Camino was Conrad. Conrad walked with his mother, Maria, and Conrad would walk. And then when he got tired, he'd get back into his crib because he was about 2.5.
Wow.
So she would push the crib with their backpack attached to the crib and stuff like that. She would push pram,
Stroller.
yeah, push that, and then he'd go in and out depending on what he was in the mood to do.
Wow.
And Conrad didn't speak English; they were from Slovenia, and so she spoke English. We would talk, and I taught Conrad how to fist bump, um, and he learned to say hi, hi.
That's awesome. When he becomes a teenager, he's going to consider all of that abuse and tell all of his friends that his mother made him walk 500 miles.
You'd be surprised at the number of kids it's
Wow.
kind of how and it's a very common thing in Spain to do. As a matter of fact, this last Camino, I saw a church group that they broke it apart. So every year they do another 100 miles.
Oh, okay.
So they'll do 100 miles, do 1 week, and then they'll come back. And then the next year they'll do the next 100 miles, and then they'll come back.
I like that.
Yeah, so it was a church youth group, and they were really lovely kids. And on my Facebook, you'll see timeline. You'll see there's a video of them singing some Spanish church youth group song, and it was just like really cute.
That's awesome. So 6 years now. Have you gone consecutively?
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
Have you gone 6 years consecutively? So
Well, no,
16 to 23 or?
No, I went in 2014, 2015. I went twice in 2016.
Wait,
2017, and then
why would you go twice?
I went for myself and with Stephen, my husband, and then I led a church group
Okay.
later that year for 100 kilometers, about 70 miles with that church group.
Wow.
And I went in 2017, and then I've been in a dry spell because of different things in my life. I was in seminary and things like that.
COVID.
So this was my first chance where I could do it.
And what would you say is the highlight out of all of the trips? Is there one?
Well, there's people. I mean, it's all about the people, and it's all about sharing your journeys with each other. So, as an example, on this trip, one of the highlights was there's an enormous cross at the highest point on the Camino. It's not the Pyrenees. The Pyrenees is not the highest point.
Oh, wow.
The highest point is actually in the middle of the whole Camino. But you start off at a higher place, so you don't feel like you're going up to a tremendous height. So at this spot, there's an enormous cross about 4 stories tall, and people bring stones from wherever they come from. I brought a stone from Pasadena, California, and laid it down at the foot of the cross. And the idea is we have no idea all the weight we carry with ourselves. And so as a metaphor, we carry it with us. We're trying to get all the weight off our backs keeping our backpacks light.
Yeah.
That this is in our pocket and we're still carrying it without knowing that we're carrying it. So we carry that. And at the foot of the cross, at the Cruz de Ferro, we put the stone down and we ask that that weight be carried for us. So that is a tradition. This trip, 3 people were carrying ashes
Oh,
of
wow.
the wife of one of the people who was walking. And so we did a prayer service at the cross, and then we spread some ashes. Um, People who walked upon us as we did this, they hung back. They let us have our space.
Yeah.
And it was just really moving to be a part of this because we had become a family, our group.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and it was just something really special to be able to share with each other and to support this, support her in her grief as she spread her wife's ashes. And to us, it was just one of the most intimate yet shared moments on this.
Truly sacred.
It was. It was. Another time, I was walking for a day and a half, 2 days with someone who couldn't walk 15 miles a day. He was lucky if he could walk 7 miles a day. And I care for him deeply. He's a friend of mine, even, and on Facebook we stay in touch. And he's been in LA, and it's because he walks on crutches,
Oh, wow.
and he could only walk so many miles a day. And so we walked together, and he just showed me what it was like to overcome this sort of challenge and adversity, and to be so loving and kind while at it. So, as an example, the first day after walking with him, we were going to go to a church service and ask for a blessing at the end of it, and I lost track of him. The church service ended, and I couldn't find him. And I looked for him, and I went outside, and he was outside talking in Spanish to the person who was lying at the foot of the steps of the church. And he was asking if he had food to eat and a place to stay. This after he had walked, because he didn't like the village he was going to stay at. He walked 10 miles that day, and he was exhausted. He didn't have blisters on his feet. He had blisters on his
So his
hands.
hands, yeah.
Right. So his blisters were his stigmata to me. And
Wow.
because he was not thinking about himself, he was just caring about the person he thought might need a little love and support.
Oh, I wish life was more like that.
It can be. That's the thing about pilgrimage. We think of those of us who do pilgrimages and those of us who go to church on Sundays. We think that's when we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And it's not. It's
No.
what we take out of that, so that we do pilgrimage every single day, so that we're at church every single day. It's what we take out of those moments and live into for the rest of the week. That's when I think we bring heaven on earth.
Preach. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. I've heard people say, well, church makes me feel good. It's like, okay, that's wonderful, but does it make you do good? And they're like, oh, I've never thought about that before. We just go to lunch afterwards. And it's like, no, we've got to make that action. We've got to do something. Love is a verb. And sitting in the pews may fill us up if we're lucky, but it's only to fill us up so we can go out there and do more for everyone else.
Exactly. A rabbi once taught me that two things. He used the metaphor of a bucket. And when my bucket is empty, I somehow have to get myself to the river and fill up my bucket. But wouldn't it be better if I have a free hand to grab the bucket of someone else who might need it and fill up both our buckets? And not just that, when I get back to where I came from, share what was in my bucket with all those who needed and didn't know that their buckets were empty,
Mm.
and share that. To me, I get that. When the rabbi
Yeah,
told that to me 40 years ago, I said, I got to remember this guy.
that's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this. Any final words, and where can people find you?
I'm on Facebook, and there's a Facebook group called the Camino of Healing. So just look for Camino of Healing, and that'll pop up. And join the group if you're interested in more. It's sort of when I'm not on Camino, it's sort of a prayer group or a chance to reflect.
Mm.
And but That's another place. Um, and you could always find me for the time being at St. John's Cathedral in Los Angeles. Um, and also, if you wish, just look for me on Instagram or Twitter as well. Camino, except there I'm called Camino Pasadena. Um,
You're owning it. You are the Camino spokesperson, Mel.
Well, there's a lot of people who've written books and all that, but I tend to focus on the spirituality of it. And I really think that if we remember that the Camino as a journey is meant not to be walked only in Spain, but to be walked every day of our lives, I think we've done what we were supposed to do, which is find a way to make our lives an ongoing journey to get to places we've never been to in ourselves, see places we've never seen in ourselves, and to hear voices that we've never heard in ourselves.
Okay, fine. I'll be at your church on Sunday.
Not going to be
See
preaching
that
this
I'm
evening.
here. I just want to be. I just love you so much. Thank you so
Oh,
much
thanks.
for coming on the show. And okay, Heidi, let's do it. Let's do it. Heidi's saying she's definitely starting in Spain. Um, but yeah, let's do it. She'll do it with the beer in her hands. I'll do it, we'll do it. Mel, thank you so much. I'm going to send you backstage, and she's saying, "Let's go, let's do it." And I'll
Buen
talk.
camino if you'd go.
Okay, we definitely I will be hitting you up for more information. I'm going to send you back, and then I'll see you backstage in a second.
Bye bye,
Thank you
everyone.
so much. What another great show. I love learning about new things and new places and finding new things that I want to do. Like I said during the show, walking was not something I would want to do, but now I want to do this. If you like the show, share it and subscribe so you can get reminders for next week or whenever we pop on. Next week, we are discussing DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's going to be another amazing show. So I will see you next week. Have a wonderful week, and as always, walk in love. Mwah! See you next week.